The people of Palestine have unmasked the ugly face of some fake, peace-loving intellectuals. These three have exposed themselves as Israeli puppets. Here's the wall of shame of those who willingly chose to be on the wrong side of history. 1. Jordan Peterson. Over the years, the Canadian professor got famous for owning feminists and liberals and went from academic to public personality. Through some of his stances against the modern degenerate order of things, he gained a Muslim following, which grew even more as he interviewed Muslim personalities. But quickly, his stance on Islam and the believers became clear as he showcased his illusion of superiority to the world in a video titled Message to Muslims.
It is time for those of you in the Muslim world to stop fighting among yourselves, you Shiites and Sunnis, and also time to stop regarding the Christians, and even more specifically, the Jews, as your enemies.
But what's perhaps more shocking than his patronizing, ignorant waffling is that even though he's admittedly a Christian, he seems to be focusing a lot on the Jews in this video, accusing Muslims of hating them. Anyone versed a bit in history knows for a fact that the biggest persecutor of the Jews after Pharaoh has been the Western civilization, and that there never was such a thing as Judeo-Christianity in history. While on the other hand, the Islamic Caliphate allowed Jews to live freely under Muslim rule. Regardless, that video, as well as him joining the Zionist-run Daily Wire and breaking bread with the Zionist Prime Minister, left little room for the benefit of the doubt. But his true colors undeniably showed when he offered Netanyahu a platform on his show, giving him nearly 1.5 hours to rewrite history and push false claims about Palestine and its people.
If you own territory, a vast swath of land, and you're doing nothing to it, and someone comes and squats on it and spends a lot of time improving it, at some point they actually develop a valid legal claim to the property itself. And so there seems to be something intrinsic to our notion of valid ownership, that if you're going to occupy a territory, you actually have to do something with it that's productive. And so that's at least part of the claim you're making at the moment, to buttress the notion that the Jewish people have a valid claim to the present territory.
Well, and
there were a lot of movement back and forth,
yes,
but the Jews have actually taken the land and made something of it.
Well,
his care for his new cause became so deep that it culminated in him tweeting, "Give him hell," on the beginning of the Al-Aqsa flood war, receiving backlash he didn't imagine, and causing him to emotionally block on X every single user who called him out on it. Since then, he has appeared on TV and claimed to regret the outcome of his emotional tweet. But his clear support to the Zionist state has been made crystal clear, and he can't fool anyone. 2. Elon Musk. He was believed to be the real-life Iron Man, a science-driven billionaire rooting for freedom and free speech. People actually believed that him taking over Twitter would mean a revival of truth online, especially after him releasing the Twitter files. But since the beginning of the current situation, his main account on X clearly shows the side he's rooting for and aiding, and his support for Zionism is actually far from being a thing we can doubt. First, right as the slaughter of tens of thousands of innocent civilians began, Elon Musk deemed it appropriate to participate in a PR tour offered by Netanyahu, in which he visited the area allegedly targeted by resistance fighters on October the 7th.
Infiltrated into the kibbutz itself. This is the house of Bill.
Like with Peterson, some people deluded themselves, thinking that the visit was only for Elon to give himself an idea of the situation. But again, all doubt vanished as the new owner of Twitter displayed unwavering support for the Zionist entity, both on his platform and on public appearances. Indeed, as he was wrongfully accused of anti-Semitism because of some X's users' anti-Zionist posts, his first reflex, almost as to please his masters, was to publicly visit the Auschwitz temple to prove how much of a non-anti-Semite he is. It is worth noting that the person he visited Auschwitz with is none but the apartheid supporter and historical revisionist Ben Shapiro, the same person paying Peterson. He also sat with him on a panel where he both demonstrated his Jewish affinities and his disdain for the Palestinian cause.
I'm like Jewish by association. I'm aspirationally Jewish. So I don't, I was like, what are people talking about with this anti-Semitism? Because I never hear it at dinner conversations. It's like an absurdity, at least in my friend circles. But when, looking at the pro-Hamas rallies in vast numbers that took place in almost every major city in the West, blew my mind. And including on the elite college campuses that are supposed to be, if you're an elite college campus, you're supposed to be enlightened. You're not supposed to be fostering hate.
Purposely misleading people by calling pro-Palestinian rallies pro-Hamas ones, despite the legitimacy of armed resistance against the oppressor, is trying to portray protesters around the world as supporters of a military cause rather than supporters of a humanitarian one. And it is a textbook Hasbara tactic. Elon Musk is doing his best to portray himself as an independent and neutral supporter of free speech, but his clear support to the Zionist state has been made crystal clear, and he can't fool anyone. 3. Craig Considine. Lastly, here's an alleged Christian who had a huge following of Muslims because of how well he used to speak of Islam and its prophet, peace be upon him. He even used to be pro-Palestine and a defender of the cause, as he rightfully viewed the defense of Qudsian interests going hand in hand with Islamic prosperity.
The Palestine issue was front and center in discussions on Islamophobia. At the time, I believed that fighting anti-Palestine sentiment was inseparable from the fight against Islamophobia. I had to be pro-Palestine in order to defend the honor of Islam and Muslims.
But in the last few weeks, his Muslim following decreased as he shamelessly and repeatedly showcased an unwavering support for the Zionist state and its army's actions.
What is happening between Israel and Hamas is more than merely a battle between these two entities. It's really a struggle between democracies, freedom of religion, against despotism and Islamism. And I'm concerned that a lot of students around the country, and faculty for that matter, prefer the latter two.
Almost daily on social media, he posts and shares content downplaying the legitimacy of the Palestinian cause and promoting the Zionist view on the subject. He denies the obvious regarding the current slaughter, defends the Zionist state's actions, and criticizes the humanitarian protests taking place in campuses around the world. Him retweeting rehashed arguments is not a rare sight, and he does not in any way hide his clear and unwavering support, even advertising and participating in propaganda movie screenings. How could anyone believe him to be neutral and driven by facts? One common point he has with Musk and Peterson is that he accuses protesters of holding Marxist views of oppressor versus oppressed, completely disregarding that it is a scriptural concept predating Marx by centuries and an important part of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The shared, baseless, and false argument between people so far apart must mean that they are knowingly or unknowingly following Hezbollah tactics to promote the agenda they serve. The main takeaway from all this for Muslims is to remember to stop chasing the recognition of popular non-Muslims and getting euphoric every time they mention us. We must all know our worth, as the best way to avoid the treacherous bite of snakes is to keep them away from us.